This is a video tutorial guide on how to play Tsubaki Yoi. The depth of this guide is somewhere between beginner and intermediate, so it assumes you already know what Tsubaki's attacks look like, and how her drives work, but don't actually know how they work in real gameplay. For that reason, we won't go over every single attack that she has and what it does, but instead, what she can do in specific situations, and what tools you should be using should those situations come up. With that in mind, you may want to review Tsubaki's in-game tutorial mode and command list before watching this video. Tsubaki is a close-range fighter with a lot of varied tools. Her movement is relatively fast, and she can hold her own at mid-range, as well as up close. She becomes much more powerful when she has stocks of her install gauge at her disposal. Thus, her game plan is a balance of charging her install gauge, spacing at neutral, and rushing down on the opponent. In neutral situations, Tsubaki is very straightforward and has the tools to accommodate many types of opponents. At long range, Tsubaki is fairly limited, with no safe way to attack the opponent. However, she can force opponents to take initiative by charging her install gauge. Her crouching D recovers the fastest, but be careful, if you don't let go fast enough, you can still be punished by your opponent's ranged attacks. With one stock of her install gauge, 236D can be used to quickly advance in on an opponent to start your offense, or to punish very slow attacks. But be careful, a skilled opponent will know how to punish or avoid this attack, so it's best not to throw it out randomly. Her 5B is her most powerful spacing tool on the ground, and it is her go-to move for fighting at mid-range. The best way to use this move is to make contact with the very tip of the attack, or to hit opponents before they can finish their own attacks. Tsubaki can also throw out 3C to slide under certain attacks, as well as get in on an unsuspecting opponent. 3C can be jump cancelled on block, so it is fairly safe to throw one out if you know it'll make contact with the opponent. Of course, that can also mean that you're putting yourself at considerable risk if the attack misses. For opponents who are mid-air, Tsubaki's 2C is a very powerful attack that can beat virtually any attack performed mid-air. It also recovers very quickly, so it is very difficult to punish this attack through normal means. On the rare occasion that 2C might clash, cancelling into a 6-2-3 attack can help fight off whatever your opponent cancels into next. On the flip side, if you're fighting air-to-air, Tsubaki is much more limited due to her short attack range. However, you can still win some aerial battles by using the speed of her jumping B to beat out an opponent's attack before it finishes. The B version of Tsubaki's special attacks can defeat projectiles. 236D works toward the beginning, 214B works toward the middle, and 22B works after the initial windup. Using these attacks to defeat your opponent's projectile attacks can be quite difficult, so make sure to learn the timing so that you don't get punished unnecessarily. Once your opponent is forced to block, you can begin your offensive. Where most characters have block strings with only a few normals and specials, Tsubaki's offense is much more varied, because not only does she have more normals for revolver action block strings, she has a host of many other offensive tools as well. Tsubaki is not very good at guard crushing opponents, and this is because all of her guard primer removing attacks are either very slow or very unsafe if blocked. Thus, she's limited to attempting a guard crush against opponents who are not paying attention, or when she has 50 heat to rapid cancel. But still, there are some situations where a guard crush can be quite worth it, so make sure to keep an eye out for these opportunities. Charge cancelling is done by cancelling a normal attack into a crouching D, and then continuing to attack. If you let go of D as fast as possible, crouching D recovers very quickly, keeping the gap between attacks relatively small. While charge cancelling a normal does not necessarily produce advantage, it will allow you to stay unpredictable and may trick your opponent into attacking when it is already too late. Unpredictable is the key here, because if your opponent is good at instant blocking or knows where the gap is, he may be able to attack during the gap. When blocked, Tsubaki can jump cancel 5A, 5B, 6C, and 3C. Jump cancelling toward your opponent will allow you to vary your approach and attack with a combination of air attacks. But be careful, if your opponent expects this, they can use an anti-air attack to fight you off. Thus, once again, it's important to stay unpredictable and to stay away from your opponent's retaliation accordingly. By combining the two approaches, your attack patterns are obscure enough to hide your other mix-up options. Continue to lay on the pressure, and your opponent will have a hard time guessing when you'll attempt a throw attack, an overhead attack, or an unblockable attack. That was just the basics of Tsubaki's offensive game. Tsubaki has a ton of other combinations and tricks that can be used to get through an opponent's guard. Experiment and come up with your own combinations to develop your own offensive playstyle. For Tsubaki, her post-combo game is relatively weak. due to the fact that she needs to choose between constant offense and charging her install gauge. If she chooses to pursue an opponent directly after a knockdown, she can arrive just as they're about to perform a roll and force them to block, or even punish certain rolls. If she chooses to charge at the end of a combo instead, her opponent will have more time to get up and can even regain ground in this time. Pay attention to the situation and strive to find a balance between the two. While piling on the pressure is important, not having any stocks in your install gauge will definitely hurt you in the long run.